My name is Sophia, and on August 15th, I learned exactly how dangerous it can be when a privileged successor thinks authority comes with a birth certificate. It started like any other Tuesday morning. I was in my corner office by 6:30 a.m., coffee in hand, finalizing the presentation for our most crucial client. The same client whose $12.7 million contract had literally saved our Denver-based firm from collapse 20 months earlier. That's when my door burst open without warning. Nathan Whitmore, 22-year-old son of our founder, heir to an empire he'd never earned through merit. He stormed in, his designer suit fitting him like expensive armor, eyes burning with the particular rage that only comes from a lifetime of never hearing no. "You think you can disrespect me?" he snarled, slamming his palm against my oak desk. "When I give instructions, you execute them. Period." I remained seated, composed, professional. "Nathan, I don't take directives from junior associates." His face flushed crimson. "I'm the future owner of this company. You'll pay for this insubordination." I arched an eyebrow coolly. "Then I'll address you appropriately when you actually own something. Until then," I gestured toward the door with practiced politeness, "please exit my office." I knew dismissing him so definitively would trigger retaliation. I just didn't anticipate it happening that very evening. Let me rewind several months before that confrontational morning. When our founder, Harrison Whitmore, announced his son would be joining the firm for hands-on experience, most of us expected Nathan would shadow departments for a few weeks before retreating to whatever luxury ski resort he'd emerged from. We couldn't have been more wrong. Nathan was immediately appointed Senior Operations Coordinator, a position I'd fought 9 years to achieve, with zero qualifications and no comprehension of our industry's complexities. Somehow, in his entitled mind, this meant I should defer to his every whim. Initially, I accommodated the arrangement. I discreetly corrected his catastrophic errors. I salvaged his disastrous client proposals before they reached boardrooms. I covered for him when he missed critical deadlines. Why? Because I respected this organization, because I believed in our mission, and perhaps because I hoped he'd mature. That hope proved spectacularly naive. The explosion came 4 weeks before that Tuesday confrontation. Nathan bulldozed into my office, threw a personnel file across my desk, and declared, "Terminate the Patterson division." They irritated me during today's meeting. The Patterson team, my meticulously assembled unit, had just secured a $6.3 million aerospace contract for our firm. "I won't terminate anyone because they bruised your ego," I replied, maintaining professional composure. His response, "I'll inform my father that you're defying direct authority." I held his gaze without wavering. "Please do." He stormed out dramatically. I assumed that would conclude the matter. I believed his father would provide necessary guidance, but I'd grossly underestimated how far privilege would stretch. On the evening of our annual autumn conference, I was representing our aerospace clients, the same sector I'd developed from nothing over 10 years. Everything seemed flawless. The venue sparkled. The investors appeared satisfied. For a brief moment, I allowed myself to believe excellence actually mattered. Then my phone chimed. One message from Harrison Whitmore. "Sophia, report to my office first thing tomorrow morning." Dread settled in my stomach. I barely slept. By 7:30 a.m., I stood before Harrison's imposing desk. He avoided eye contact entirely. "Sophia, I'm afraid I must—" "Check your email first," I interrupted, leaning forward. His complexion turned ashen. Because what he didn't know, I'd been meticulously documenting everything. Harrison Whitmore stared at his monitor like it contained classified secrets. Color drained from his weathered face. He clicked methodically, opening the encrypted folder I'd transmitted the previous night. Inside waited 84 forwarded communications, every single one from Nathan. Some were absurd, others bordered on criminal. Nathan commanding departments to fabricate progress reports, Nathan instructing accounting to manipulate projections to validate his forecasts, Nathan messaging me directly with pearls like, "Comply immediately or I'll ensure your termination." I stood silently, allowing Harrison to absorb the evidence. Finally, he collapsed into his leather chair, exhaling deeply. I had no knowledge of this extent. I crossed my arms. Didn't you?" He flinched, because truthfully he had suspected, at least partially, but willful ignorance becomes convenient when your heir apparent misbehaves. Convenient until documentation lands in your inbox. Harrison buried his face in his hands. "Sophia, why didn't you approach me earlier?" I kept my tone measured. "Because I believed this organization valued competence, and because I didn't want to be responsible for destroying your family." He looked up, eyes reflecting guilt and panic. "The board cannot see this evidence." I gave him a pointed look. "I'm not here to blackmail you, Harrison. I'm here because your son invaded my office yesterday demanding I fire a team that just generated $6.3 million in revenue. When I refused, he threatened to obliterate my career." I paused deliberately. "I came because I won't permit a 22-year-old brat to abuse people while you enable him." For several moments, only the air conditioning's hum filled the silence. Then Harrison whispered, "What do you require?" I smiled slightly. "I want my career protected. I want the Patterson team secured. I want this circus ended before it destroys everything you've built. Nathan, that's your responsibility." I left Harrison's office with adrenaline coursing through me. This wasn't about vengeance, not initially. It was about justice, about ensuring merit still counted for something. But by Thursday morning, I realized Nathan wouldn't surrender gracefully. It began with whispers, emails I was mysteriously excluded from, meetings rescheduled without notification, budget approvals inexplicably delayed, the refined art of corporate warfare. I caught Nathan smirking outside a strategy session I'd been barred from attending. He actually had the audacity to wink at me. Here's what entitled people like Nathan never grasp. They assume power is a game they can manipulate. What they fail to recognize is that sometimes the people they attempt to crush are the ones supporting the entire structure. A week later, Harrison summoned me again. "You're correct," he admitted quietly. "Nathan's completely uncontrollable." I raised an eyebrow. "Excellent. So you've addressed this with him?" Harrison looked away. I attempted to reason with him. "He's resistant. He informed me that if I don't remove you, he'll approach the board and create chaos." I actually laughed aloud. 22 years old and threatening board intervention? Remarkable. Harrison remained serious. "Sophia, I'm compelled to place you on administrative leave temporarily just to appease him. It's not personal." I stared at him, stone cold. "It's never personal, is it?" He winced. "I'll rectify this situation, I promise." But I already understood. He wouldn't confront his son. He was prepared to sacrifice me, the architect of his international aerospace division, because it was simpler. I nodded professionally and exited his office with dignity intact. But I wasn't defeated, because Harrison had no idea what I'd been preparing for months. Walking out of Harrison Whitmore's office that morning, I felt neither anger nor surprise. I'd learned long ago that in corporate environments, loyalty evaporates under pressure, especially when family dynamics interfere. But what Nathan and his father didn't realize was that I wasn't standing alone, because while they were orchestrating my removal, I'd been constructing something far more substantial. 5 months before Nathan's office invasion, I'd noticed subtle shifts. Clients expressing concerns, senior managers asking peculiar questions. Several high-value partnerships I'd personally negotiated were being mysteriously reassigned. It didn't require genius to realize Nathan was positioning himself to control the aerospace division I'd built from scratch, and Harrison was permitting it. So I did the one thing they never anticipated. I began systematically documenting everything. Every email, every meeting transcript, every client complaint about Nathan's conduct. I maintained pristine, organized records of every reckless decision he made and every cover-up Harrison allowed, but I wasn't foolish enough to keep that intelligence isolated. I approached 2 people I trusted implicitly within the organization: Diana Patterson, our head of regulatory compliance, and Victor Chen, our senior legal counsel. Both had collaborated with me for years. Both had privately expressed concerns about Nathan's behavior. Over coffee, off the record, I presented everything I'd compiled. Initially, Diana shook her head. Sophia, this could end careers. Victor agreed. If the board discovers this, I met their eyes directly. They need to discover this, not for my benefit, but for the company's survival. After a lengthy pause, Diana leaned forward. I'm with you. Victor nodded. Count me in. That's when the real work began. We spent countless late evenings cross-referencing contracts Nathan had contaminated. We tracked compliance violations that could have triggered federal investigations. Victor drafted confidential memoranda outlining potential breaches of fiduciary responsibility. Diana discovered that one of Nathan's pet projects had nearly violated FAA regulations. Had I not intervened discreetly 4 months earlier, the consequences could have bankrupted the company. By the time Harrison called me in for administrative leave, I remained calm. Because the board wouldn't learn about Nathan's misconduct from me. They'd hear it from their own compliance and legal departments, but that wasn't the complete strategy. The final element involved our largest aerospace client, Horizon Defense Systems. I'd cultivated that relationship personally, and I knew they harbored serious reservations about Nathan after a catastrophic presentation he'd delivered without my oversight. I arranged lunch with Dr. Rebecca Foster, their chief partnership officer. No pressure, no agenda. But when I casually inquired about their future contract plans, Rebecca gave me a knowing expression. Sophia. Confidentially? If you're gone, we're reconsidering our entire relationship. I blinked. Seriously? She nodded firmly. We don't partner with organizations managed by incompetents. That was all the confirmation I needed. By the time my suspension appeared in the internal newsletter, 2 events occurred simultaneously. Diana and Victor submitted their joint compliance report directly to the board, and Horizon Defense Systems transmitted a formal letter of concern to Harrison Whitmore, with an unmistakable warning about withdrawing future business if leadership changes weren't implemented. I wish I could claim I felt triumphant, but honestly, I just felt prepared, because Nathan Whitmore had spent months believing he could eliminate me with hollow threats and juvenile tantrums. What he failed to understand was fundamental. You can't intimidate people who have nothing left to lose and everything worth fighting for. The official announcement hit company-wide email at 10:47 a.m. on a Friday. Sophia Castellanos, administrative leave pending internal review. No explanation, no context, just a cold, clinical sentence announcing my effective removal. But what Harrison Whitmore didn't know, the review had already begun, and it wasn't focused on me. At 11:32 a.m., Diana and Victor submitted their joint report directly to the board of directors. No dramatics, no accusations, no finger-pointing, just irrefutable facts. Nathan Whitmore had attempted to manipulate regulatory data on multiple occasions. He had issued directives beyond his authority, risking contractual violations. He had interfered with compliance protocols, potentially exposing the company to federal scrutiny. And Harrison Whitmore, through negligence or willful blindness, had permitted it to continue. The report concluded with a straightforward recommendation. We advise immediate review of leadership accountability and potential breaches of fiduciary duty. By 1:15 p.m., the boardroom was in emergency session. I wasn't present naturally, but Diana provided updates via encrypted messages. Harrison looks like he's aged 20 years in 3 hours. Nathan attempted to blame you. Board isn't buying it. They want comprehensive answers. I read each update with peculiar serenity. I hadn't leaked anything to the board personally. I hadn't gone public. I didn't need to. Truth has its own momentum. Around 4 p.m., Harrison called. I let it ring. He tried again. By the 5th attempt, I answered. Sophia, we need to discuss this situation. I allowed him to sweat momentarily. Regarding my suspension? He exhaled sharply. Regarding everything. We met in his office late that afternoon. For once, Nathan wasn't lurking nearby. Harrison appeared hollow. The confident founder persona had evaporated. The board wants to meet with you tomorrow morning, he said quietly. I nodded. And? He hesitated. They've requested Nathan's immediate resignation and for me to step down temporarily pending investigation. I didn't flinch. Sounds appropriate. Harrison gave me a bitter smile. You actually did it. You destroyed him. I met his gaze steadily. I didn't destroy anyone. Nathan destroyed himself. I simply refused to participate in the cover-up. For a moment, I expected him to explode. Instead, he slumped forward. You were our most valuable asset, he whispered. I should have supported you. I remained silent, because in that moment there was nothing more to say. The next morning, I entered the boardroom I'd never been invited to before. 16 directors, stern expressions, serious demeanor. But when I sat down, something shifted in the atmosphere. They didn't interrogate me, they didn't accuse. They requested my perspective, and I provided it, professionally, calmly, supported by documented evidence. I explained the deals I'd negotiated, the partnerships I'd protected, the risks I'd mitigated that Nathan's recklessness had created. I observed heads nodding around the polished table. By the meeting's conclusion, the chairwoman leaned forward. Sophia, we'd like you to consider accepting an interim leadership position for the aerospace division while we restructure. I could hardly process it. I wasn't just reinstated, I was promoted. But even as I shook hands and smiled professionally, part of me remained guarded, because promotions are temporary. Titles shift. Power is transient. But respect, that's earned through competence and character, and it's the one thing Nathan Whitmore would never recover. 4 weeks after that board meeting, Nathan Whitmore had vanished. No farewell email, no announcement, simply gone. I heard whispers he'd been dispatched to manage family real estate investments in Phoenix, corporate speak for exile to avoid scandal. And Harrison Whitmore? He stepped down voluntarily, citing health concerns. The company's internal memo praised his visionary leadership while highlighting his commitment to smooth transition processes. Translation: We won't terminate you publicly if you disappear quietly. On my first official day as interim director of aerospace operations, I walked past Nathan's former corner office, empty except for a nameplate abandoned on the desk. I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate, because this wasn't about proving superiority. It was about protecting the people who'd been risking their careers under his chaotic leadership. I assembled my team for a meeting. No grandiose speeches, no victory declarations, just one simple promise. I don't care about titles or family connections. I care about competence, integrity, and mutual respect. That's how we move forward. Together. For the first time in months, I witnessed genuine relief on their faces. 8 weeks later, Horizon Defense Systems renewed their contract, not because we pleaded, but because Dr. Foster called personally and said, "We want to partner with leaders who understand excellence." That's you. Other clients followed suit. Deals began closing again. Stability returned. The company didn't just recover, it began flourishing. Then came the final development. The board invited me for a private dinner. I wasn't certain what to expect, but sitting across from people who once viewed me as merely another department head, I realized something fundamental had changed. They weren't looking at me as a temporary solution anymore. They were looking at me as a leader. The chairwoman spoke first. Sophia, we'd like to offer you the permanent position of Senior Vice President of Aerospace Operations, effective immediately. I paused, absorbing the magnitude. I have conditions, I said quietly. She smiled. Let's hear them. I outlined my requirements. 0 tolerance for nepotism in executive roles, transparent accountability standards for all leadership, complete authority to build and protect my division according to my standards. The chairwoman nodded after each point. Agreed. I signed the contract 2 weeks later, not for the title, not even for the substantial salary increase, but because I wanted to ensure no one else would have to wage the same battles I did, just to be treated with basic professional dignity. And Nathan? The last I heard, he was attempting to launch some cryptocurrency venture in Miami, hemorrhaging his trust fund while trying to impress investors who saw through his entitled facade immediately. Amusing how that works. When you construct your world on privilege and intimidation, it collapses the moment someone refuses to participate in the charade. Looking back, I've realized something profound. Nathan tried to destroy my career because I wouldn't submit to his demands. Harrison tried to sacrifice me to preserve family harmony, but neither understood the fundamental truth about real authority. It doesn't come from titles or threats. It comes from competence, character, and the trust of people who believe in your leadership, and that's something no privileged heir and no cowardly founder can ever counterfeit. The aerospace division I now lead has become the company's most profitable sector. We've expanded into 4 new markets, secured partnerships with 7 major defense contractors, and our team has grown from 15 to 52 highly skilled professionals. Nathan's legacy at the company has been completely erased, his failed projects terminated, his dangerous compliance shortcuts corrected, his toxic management style replaced with actual leadership. Sometimes I wonder if he ever understood that his downfall wasn't orchestrated by me. It was the inevitable result of his own incompetence and entitlement finally meeting consequences. Real power, I've learned, isn't something you inherit or demand. It's something you earn, one competent decision at a time, one protected teammate at a time, one successful project at a time. And once you've earned it legitimately, no spoiled heir can ever take it away.